It's not often a subscriber sends me an email and asks me to roast their watch, but that's what Joe did. Who am I to disappoint the man? Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Yes indeed, thank you to Joe from Geelong for providing today's Sunday roast. All of us, I'm sure, have been disappointed by a watch purchase. I know I have. I'm guessing though that level of disappointment increases along with the purchase price of the watch. Joe spent the princely sum of $2,900 on a Rado Captain Cook Hyperchrome in titanium, and he's never been more disappointed by a watch, hence his email to me. Now, I like the Rado Captain Cook, or at least I used to. When it first came out in 2017, I thought it was a refreshing change from their dubious gold and white ceramic models that filled the catalogue at the time. It was a faithful reissue of an original watch from the 1960s and a little honey of a watch at that. And 37mm remained faithful to that original sizing as well as the styling. Since then, I don't know what Rado are doing to the Captain Cook range apart from filling it with more dubious colour schemes, dubious materials, semi-skeletonized dials and rose gold versions for the ladies. Anyway, Joe didn't buy one of the 37mm, he bought a 45mm. I've got nothing against big watches per se, as long as they're good. This one, I'm not so sure. Joe gave me a laundry list of complaints, and I've got a few of my own. Let's flip the camera and roast it. And there it is. Now, I am well aware that this is the second Sunday roast in a row where I'm bashing a big boy. I can't just turn it into a series where I bash large watches. As I said with the Boulevard review 2 weeks ago, it's not just the size, it's the rest of the watch as well, fundamentally failing. And I think this one has a few fundamental failings as well. 45, not my cup of tea, but hey, if you're a big guy or you like big watches, then go for it. But this one, again, like the Boulevard, comes with a number of words of caution. So I will rattle through the dimensions and specifications, then I'll discuss some pros, some elements of this watch that I do think are really nice, before getting onto a much longer list of cons. Let's start with those dimensions then. 45mm in diameter. That's okay, especially as the thickness is bang on 14. Now that is pretty much the same size as your average NH35 powered dive watch. The problem though is the Lug-To-Lug of 54.5. Now that's not too bad, however the mid links of the end links protrude, giving this an effective Lug-To-Lug of 59.5. Now, who has got the wrist for that? I certainly don't. 22mm lug width, sized up for me though, 7-inch wrist. I remeasured my wrist, I suspect. The wrist measurement is one of these measurements that a gentleman makes once in his life, adds 10% and then never measures it again for fear that he got it wrong. But I measured mine again the other day. It is 7 inches. Sized up for my 7-inch wrist, this watch weighs in at 143 grams. So it is a whopper, but it doesn't weigh like a whopper. And the reason why this big watch is relatively light is because, as I've said a couple of times, this one is made of titanium, unlike the smaller versions of the Captain Cook, which are stainless steel. It's got that kind of classic titanium dull grey look, and it's hardened, so it is scratch resistant. There are very few scratches on this one. I'm not quite sure how long Joe's had it or how often he's worn it, but it has held up well. Finish is really simple though for 2,900 Aussie dollars. Now, Joe initially purchased his on the canvas strap, but added one of these titanium bracelets on as an option later. So high polished mid links here and that dull titanium look from the outer edges, and it is a double security pusher, butterfly deployant, very nicely machined, I have to say though, in titanium. I'll be coming back to that deployant though a bit later. But let's show it a little bit of love before we start bashing it. That is a gorgeous looking caseback, screw on titanium caseback, 200 meters of water resistance, screw down crown on this one as well. And those seahorses do look fantastic. It's quite a nice deep etching there as well. Behind that caseback is an ETA C07.111. That is basically a Powermatic 80 by any other name. And this one is running like a champ, as you can see, no complaints there, though obviously you can get this movement in much cheaper watches. And let's give the dial and handset a little bit of love while we're here, because it is a gorgeous design. Lovely colour on this one as well, dark blue, rich gloss dial, and a beautiful dark blue ceramic bezel insert to match. Applied indices, Rado brand name printed above the pinion in white, and Captain Cook model number printed beneath the pinion also in white. Swiss made either side of the 6. They haven't cluttered this one at all. I love that little swinging logo in red there, the little kind of Rado anchor style logo. That does move around as the watch does. And it's a very interesting set of signature hands. The hour hand is beveled down the middle as it heads towards that broad arrow tip, and the second hand is skeletonized. Again, very, very nice, but then again, you are paying quite a lot for this one, so it should have a cracking looking handset. Another undoubted highlight of the Captain Cook range is that concave bezel. It looks pretty good from this angle, looking across the watch at the double dome sapphire. It looks even better when you get the watch into some natural light and start moving it around. Beautiful combination of light play from the bezel insert and that sapphire crystal. It is a very, very pleasing effect. And it is most certainly legible, but then again, if a 45mm dive watch wasn't decently legible, then it would have bigger problems than I could tackle in a 10-minute Sunday roasting session. But unfortunately, it's all downhill from here. It's a bashing from this point on, and I'm going to start with the crown. High polished silver means it doesn't have an awful lot of grip to it. It's not particularly big considering the size of the watch as well. If you over tighten that one, you're going to have a hell of a time untightening it, especially if you have wet fingers. Now, Joe was particularly vitriolic about the bezel action. I don't think it's awful. I mean, titanium watches can be rather hit or miss when it comes to bezels. This one is definitely a miss as opposed to a hit, but I have felt worse. Just doesn't feel nearly as solid as it should, given the overall bulk of the piece. And while we're on the bezel, Joe complained about the colours that they've chosen for these numerals and for the markers. Interestingly enough, the triangle is in white, the rest of them are in grey. And in low light conditions, I know I can't quite replicate that here. Yeah, they're not going to be nearly as legible as they would be if they were white. Odd choice. And then there is the lume. I assume that this is BGW9 Superluminova because it has that pale blue glow. Looks pretty good initially, but keep your eyes on the index at 11. When I turn the speed up, things are still looking pretty good as we approach 10 minutes, halfway. Yeah, it's looking all right. When we get to the end of my 20-minute test period, which I always think is about 4 to 5 hours human eye equivalent, I'll slow it back down to 1x. What do you think of that index at 11? It is clearly not as bright as the others. Joe spoke to Rado about this and other problems he had with the watch. They said, very sorry to hear that. Why don't you buy one of our new models? That is cheeky. And then there's the date complication. The original watch had a Cyclops. I reckon this one could definitely have done with a Cyclops, especially as they haven't increased the size of the date wheel on this large 45mm model. At least they've colour matched it though. Oh. Actually, they haven't. It's a black date wheel on a blue dial. That looks a bit off. Those starkly angled vintage style lugs look great when you're looking at the watch in profile, but they don't do the watch any favours when you get it on wrist. Like I said, I've got an average size wrist. I would probably have gone for a smaller version of the Captain Cook. It was me, but you can see the gaps there that those lugs create between the case and the bracelet. The whole thing just doesn't wear well in spite of the fact that it's made of titanium and should wear well. And then there is the bracelet, a 400 Aussie dollar optional extra. Why doesn't it colour match the case? Why is the titanium a different shade from the case? There is no excuse for that at all. Also no excuse for a pin and collar system at 2,900 Aussie dollars. Also no excuse for no micro adjust whatsoever on this one. Now Joe didn't say whether there are any half links or not. I don't think they are. That means it's a really hit or miss experience whether you're going to get this one to fit well, and especially considering how big and top heavy and potentially bobbly that case is, this design is a bit of a disaster. I had thought that that bar there was a half link. I thought that could be removed. But when you look at the underside, that doesn't appear to be the case at all. It just looks like an awkward way of getting the bracelet to fit to the clasp. So, Joe, thanks very much for loaning me your Rado. I hope this is the video that you wanted me to make. I hope I echoed some of your sentiments, plus adding in some of my own specific moans and niggles about your Rado, mate. Maybe you should cut your losses, put this one on eBay and buy something else. Just don't link this video in your sale listing. So there you have it, another Sunday roast, another watch savaged. Well done for making it to the finish. If you enjoy this style, why not check out another couple of previous Sunday roast installments. Thanks for watching, I'll see you soon.